What's up, everyone? We're here for some post-game Locked On Bucks action, and maybe this game was a little more enjoyable than what we thought it was going to be with the availability or the non-availability of some of the stars on the Bucks roster. We know Giannis is out, Chris was out, Dante's season debut off for now anyway. He will be back hopefully soon, but the Bucks use a big fourth quarter to beat the Pacers 114-99. So let's break it all down.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show daily and also find my work over at ESPN. And joining me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that's brought to you by True Bill. True Bill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. And for those in Milwaukee tonight, perhaps it's been a bit of a long night. I know there's some crazy weather over there, so hopefully everyone's doing well and they wake up, or maybe it's through the night. Maybe you're listening to Locked On Bucks through the night. But either way, we really appreciate it. And this is a fun post-game podcast to do. Now, we will get to Giannis and Chris and everything else that's happened since I last podcast. I did a crossover podcast with Tony East from Locked On Pacers. As soon as we finished recording, Giannis, the tweet came out that he was going to be out. That's the way these things always go when you're podcasting. But Frank, I didn't have high expectations going into this game. The Pacers have been playing a little bit better basketball of late, but just based on the lineups the Bucks were going to have to go to here, I thought it was going to be a stretch for them to win. A 21-0 run in the fourth quarter, that has to be their best run for the season, probably, without an opposition team scoring, and it probably came in unlikely circumstances, but I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I messaged some friends late in the third quarter. I was like, the Pacers are probably going to win, but they still stink. It's just all night long, I was just kind of waiting for them to kind of turn the screws for the Bucks to go through a real scoring drought, just, given the lack of weapons, down 7 guys. And obviously, as you said, Giannis out for likely, 10 days-ish, potentially less, potentially more. And Chris, good news was he went through his workout tonight pregame, so there was some thought maybe as questionable that he might play. But obviously you sneak out a win without him, let him get an extra couple days of rest. Obviously that's an even bigger win, you could argue. So in a lot of ways, like the most fun games to win are these games where it's like, you're resting a bunch of guys, or in this case, obviously not by choice, resting a bunch of guys. And to see, first and foremost, obviously we're going to have to talk about Jrue Holiday. He was kind of the anchor of the offense, just creating his own shot, dishing out assists, 26 and 14 tonight, another efficient scoring game. That obviously I think is sort of the headline, but to get, the supporting cast stepping up and the guys that have been doing it, Grayson Allen, maybe not so much, but, all the other guys that have been really valuable role players, particularly, notably Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton, both of those guys coming up with 20-point games. And as you said, I just worried, defensively without, obviously Brooke, without Giannis, and not even having Boogie, right? Like you really had so little size to throw at a Pacer team that, as we've talked about, they struggle to play as big as they are because particularly Miles Turner doesn't really, can't really hunt mismatches typically. We know what Sabonis can do. But with the exception of Sabonis getting a bunch of offensive rebounds in the third quarter, they never seem to really exploit it. And, I think what we talked about early in the season, when the Bucks are down key guys like this, especially without Giannis and his ability to score inside, these games are largely going to come down to referendums on 3-point shooting. And I don't want to minimize some of the other things that happened tonight, but obviously they were shorthanded offensively and defensively. It's kind of a smoke and mirrors night on both ends, but they hit enough threes. And Pacers, man, they just a disappointing team, just continues to disappoint. So really good win if you're the Bucks to claw out a win under the circumstances. And I was thinking before the game, the 38 game win streak for Giannis against the Central Division remains alive, regardless of what happens tonight. But it's kind of just been remarkable how easily they've dispatched the Pacers in each of these 3 games so far this season.
Yeah, a really weird team, the Pacers. It's funny. We were talking, as I mentioned, with Tony East yesterday on the podcast, and just about Rick Carlisle and this team trying to figure out how to play on offense. And again, Sabonis, as you pointed to, he had the 14 rebounds. 6 of those were offensive, but just really a non-factor again. And it's so strange. You feel like this is the type of game with no Giannis. Obviously, there's no Chris, no Brook, Boogie, all the guys you mentioned, that he should be able to dominate this game, and he can't. And then as far as Miles Turner goes, I know he had a bunch of blocks that honestly felt like a little bit of shot blocking practice. They were pretty soft shot attempts from the Bucks that made it pretty easy for him. Marcus was, I was going to say pulling his hair out, but he was getting frustrated watching this game that they weren't trying to throw them down. Jordan Nwora, shout out to him. He did later in this game. But Miles Turner, what a weird player. I was listening to the Zach Lowe podcast a few days ago, and quite clearly I very rarely disagree with Zach just because he's pretty much on the money. But the Miles Turner discussion around the Brook Lopez stuff was so fascinating to me because every time we see Miles Turner, he's just a non-factor. He can't shoot the 3. Like the talk about him shooting the 3, I feel like he never hits a 3 against the Bucks. He just shoots these rainbows. They clang off the rim. He's throwing up bricks. You mentioned the fact that he can't take advantage of mismatches. There was a possession early in this game where he had Jrue Holiday in the post, and Jrue was just like, I don't know what you're trying to do. Like, back me down. Is that what you're trying to do? This is very weird behavior by you, Miles. And he just took the ball and away the Bucks went. So I guess the question I have for you, Frank, we saw this on Twitter, or someone mentioned it to me on Twitter and said that they were a little bit, or they were questioning. I don't want to say they said that they were frustrated, but they're just like, why doesn't Jrue do this all the time? Why does he play passive? We've discussed this before, that when the Bucks do have Chris and Giannis in the lineup, there's a lot of ball sharing to be had. Giannis takes a lot of the possessions. He'll have a lot of the ball handling. But we have seen pretty consistently, I believe, that when Giannis is out of the lineup, you do see this different version of Jrue Holiday. I don't think it's a concern because clearly the results are pretty damn good when all 3 are in the lineup. But it is always fun to see that he is a guy that is willing to take over and show this aggressive side offensively when he's called on.
Yeah, and I think, and we've been talking about it. It's not like he's been struggling of late, right? He hasn't necessarily had 26 and 14 type games, but he's been shooting really well from the field now for weeks, basically, and has been a lot more consistent offensively. I mean, the big challenge with Jrue is he doesn't get to the free throw line much at all tonight. That was the one problem. He didn't really hit his what, 4 was he 1 out of 4 or something from free throw line. So that is kind of one of the downsides of his game that sort of limits his efficiency, and that he just doesn't look for fouls. And there was that one play where like he got, I think, Duarte driving along the baseline and drew a foul, and he kicked it out, and you could see on the replay he was like, oh man, why didn't I try to go for a shot to get to the foul line? But yeah, I mean, his old man game is just I mean, it's so fun to watch in that, how much he uses his left hand. He had that little Statue of Liberty where he didn't gather and he just went straight up with the left hand. And I don't know how many buckets he had with his left hand tonight. But yeah, I mean, when he's able to work in the post like that, and you're able to space out the defense enough so that they can't just completely kind of collapse on him. He's just such a tough cover. And he started, like, they were getting some mismatch. They were getting like Duarte on him. He was really feasting on some of the kind of lesser defenders. But I mean, then they put Brogdon on him, and he took Brogdon just to the rim a couple times as well. And it's not like Brogdon was the answer. Really, in the fourth quarter, I barely scored in the fourth quarter because basically they were doubling him, like 25 feet from the basket. They were showing that extra defender to try to get the ball out of his hand. So kind of the ultimate compliment if you're Jrue Holiday, right? The fact that the defense is basically like, we just don't want to even like trying to let you get inside the 3-point line. So yeah, really impressive night from him. And I can't help but think, right? I mean, obviously he's on the sort of downward trend of his career at some point here, right? He's 31 years old, but I mean, what he does there, the way he's scoring, he doesn't need explosiveness to do what he does. He's just got so much craft and strength that that aspect of his game is going to age well. And I think especially when you think about like that spacing, he needs spacing to be able to do that. And that's one thing that having Giannis off the floor actually helps with, right? Because Giannis is the one guy who plays a lot of minutes who isn't really a guy that's going to space the floor. So that's one upside of, being able to go to Jrue when Giannis is not in the game, is that, he does have a little bit more room to operate and try to kind of work his way, burrow his way into the paint and get to, some of those up fakes and get to the basket with efficiency, which obviously we worried early, a month ago or whenever it was, we were like, man, he's missing a lot of bunnies. And it just seems like, he's gotten a lot better in that department of late, finishing a lot more consistently. And some of these are not like easy finishes either. I mean, some of these like driving bankers with, high off the glass, they're impressive stuff. So shout out to him. I mean, with Giannis out now for however long it's going to be, hopefully you get Chris back next game. I mean, you're going to need those guys to pick up the scoring load, because there's going to be games where the other team shoots a lot better and plays a lot better than the Pacers did tonight. And obviously, if you can claw out some wins and, just kind of keep your head above water without Giannis, then, you feel like you're pretty well positioned. Hopefully when he comes back, again, if it's around Christmas, a little after Christmas.
So speaking of tough finishes, Pat Connaughton is a guy I want to get to, and he again tonight had some ridiculous finishes. But I've got some trivia for you in just a second here, and it's gonna be. I'm gonna say I think it's gonna be difficult trivia, but we'll see how we go. But the Bucks have had to have a bunch of bench players in the lineup tonight, and some guys that haven't been getting as many minutes, and they got some stats tonight, which you'll be very happy about if you're playing Prize Picks. You've been hearing me tell you about Prize Picks for months. I don't know if you guys have signed up yet, but you certainly should have. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. If you have not checked it out, you're missing out. I'm telling you, you're going to love this app. It's for NBA fans, mixed spots, pick'ems. They've got everything you need. The Christmas Day games are going to be off the charts and even more fun if you play Prize Picks. It'll be more fun for Bucks fans if Giannis is playing, but we'll see how that goes. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop market. It's the best DFS prop market game on the market. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as the bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. So all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com today and use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We do thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. We're nearing the weekend, and I believe Thursdays on the NFL channel are the crossover episodes that they talk about the next matchup coming up. So if you're a Packers fan, go check out Locked On Packers with Peter Bukowski there. But it's time for some trivia. As I mentioned, Pat Connaughton tonight had another 20 points, banged in a whole bunch of threes again. So there are 3 players in the NBA right now that are attempting more than 6 threes a game and hitting at least 43% of them. Now, yes, I know 43%. It's kind of a random number there, but he's hitting more than 43%, Pat. So Pat is one of them. Have you got any idea, any guesses who the other 2 guys might be?
I know Grayson Allen was around 42% before, so I'm guessing he's not probably in that group. I mean, is Steph still at 43%? I know his field goal percentage has dropped down of late, but is Steph one of those? I mean, he's the obvious guy you'd always guess would be in that range. Is he one?
He's not, but there is a guy that's very close to my heart.
Joe Ingles. Is Joe Ingles doing this?
No, close. You're on the right track.
Patty Mills.
Yes. Patty Mills is one, and you're not going to get the other one. The other one's Luke Kennard. So anyway, the point being, I didn't even know Luke Kennard was playing. Maybe I should watch more Clippers games. But anyway, the point being that Pat just continues to do this. And we've spoken about the confidence that clearly he got through last year, and it seemed to be building through the regular season. But I didn't really know what to say about it. I mean, he just does this night in and night out. Now, as you pointed to, I think last week on the podcast or a little bit earlier, that you kind of just feel like every shot he takes is going in. He took one run in front of the Bucks bench tonight where Sabonis was right out there. Pretty good closeout, pretty good contest. Nothing but net. It's like, it's Pat. What do you think? Like, some of his step back, quick release, guy in his face, they're just hitting nothing but net right now. And it's just wild to see the development of this guy. But again, we always talk about it, but just going back to the discussion last year, the contract, what a bargain. And he is now such a reliable player that I don't think if it was a year ago and you were looking at this lineup and Pat was in the starting lineup that you would just feel comfortable that he's going to contribute, but just so reliable.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's been most impressive is, he's so, I mean, he hit a couple of corner threes tonight, but his ability to be so dangerous from above the break. He doesn't need to be right at the line. He can be, a couple steps back from the line. And, I think his comfort level, he's not an off the dribble 3-point shooter, obviously, right? Like, I'd be curious how many of his 3-pointers, we probably should look that up, are actually like, off not zero dribbles. I would imagine like very few. While I blather on here, you can try to look up that stat. But he's gotten very good at catching and shooting when he's not just like perfectly level set with his feet. On the break, I would say generally, I'm never played high level basketball, but I certainly always preferred to be shooting when I was moving forward a little bit, right? So you don't have any problem like shooting it, short arming it. But that's not easy, right? And he's very good in the break catching it. And while he's, kind of moving a little bit still forward and maybe to the side, hitting those wing threes. And I think he's also like, you see it sometimes in kind of these 2-man game plays with like Giannis and things like that. Like, he can set a screen and he can kind of, relocate out to another part of the perimeter. And sometimes he's like his movement is actually pushing him away from the basket, and he'll catch, shoot, and he'll actually be kind of, it's not like a fadeaway, but he'll be, again, kind of his body is moving backwards away from the hoop. And that's an awkward way to shoot. I mean, not like the shot that, you like practice, like, trying to do all the time, but his level of comfort, that just the confidence has just been remarkable this year. And, as we talked about, I think a couple of weeks ago, the fact that he mixes that in with those knifing little drives to the hoop. He doesn't drive much, but it seems like whenever he drives, he's able to get to the rim, and, he's great at throwing up those angled bank shots, going to his right. So, and obviously his cutting around the baseline as well. So, I don't know how many 20-point games is he at, like 5 20-point games now or something like that this season. I mean, I think he's probably blown away at this point, his previous total in his entire career of 20-point games. But, I mean, what more can you say about him, right? I mean, you think about next offseason, Bobby Portis going for 20 tonight, Pat going for 20 tonight. Both those guys clearly are going to opt out. And, it's like you just hope the Bucks are going to be able to keep both those guys. And, we talked so much in the preseason about, Dante versus Grayson Allen and the decision the Bucks would have to make with the 2 restricted free agents. Obviously, they end up extending Grayson. And now it's like, man, I'm really excited to see Dante back in the lineup. Of course, the COVID news was, another kind of gut punch for him, I'm sure, thinking he was going to be back tonight. But I mean, it's like, oh man, now you gotta pay Pat Connaughton too, and he's been great, right? I mean, you'd absolutely hate to lose Pat given what he meant to them in the the playoff run last year, and now just absolutely hitting the ground running and bringing all of that momentum into this new season. I think the only bad game I can think of was basically Game 6 of the NBA Finals, in which he missed all of his shots and even missed those 2 free throws. Right? Thankfully, it didn't matter. But he obviously just has hit so many big shots for the Bucks. And as you said, when he missed that shot in Toronto, a week or 2 ago, whenever that was, it was like, oh man, I missed a shot. Huh, what? And by the way, speaking of the playoffs in Game 6. People on YouTube can see my shirt right now. It's basically one of these. It looks like the old like champion Bucks basketball like NBA shirts from like the 80s. But I have to give a shout out to friend of the pod, friend of Bucks Nation, Andy Gorzalski. I hung out with Andy and others, including Andy Menchel and Jimmy Kogutkevich. I think I'm pronouncing their names right. I once had a discussion with Jimmy after a live pod about how to pronounce his last name, but after Game 6, we hung out and at like 3:30 in the morning or whatever, we finally like are going home, and I'm just like walking with them because it's just like soaking in, like, why would you want that night to end right? We're just talking about stuff, whatever, because those guys are all super old school Bucks fans. And Andy's like, oh hey, I got a shirt in my car. So we go to his car, and he had this shirt in his car. He had these like made specially, basically. He liked the way these like these old school shirts look so much that he just made them himself. They're not like real authentic shirts. So this was I think this is the only gear I got from the night of Game 6, and it comes courtesy of my friend Andy Korzalski. So shout out to Andy, man about town and general, just awesome Milwaukeean. But anyway, what else do we want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Bobby Portis or Jordan Nwora? Jordan Nwora sighting? How about that?
Yeah, well, let's get to Jordan Nwora. Before we do that, I looked up this number, and it is incredible stuff. So Pat has attempted 184 threes so far this season. How many of those 184 attempts do you think he's taken at least one dribble before letting it fly?
3, I don't know, something like stupid.
7. Which is still pretty dumb. By the way, he's 3 for 7 on those attempts, so he doesn't miss those either.
Oh,
He
consistent. 42.8% on 3 out of 7 is 42.8571%. There you go.
Well, he's 0 for 3 on one dribble, 0 for 1 on 2 dribbles, but 3 for 3 when he takes 3 to 6 dribbles. Automatic, does not miss.
ISO Pat. Just
yeah.
ISO Pat. Can't miss.
It's incredible stuff. All right, let's get to Jordan Nwora. After I talk about Truebill, our sponsor of the podcast. Truebill is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't want, a need, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 per year with Truebill because companies make it hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and they will cancel your unwanted subscriptions all in one tap. And Truebill Concierge is there when you need them to cancel those subscriptions you don't want, so you don't have to do it. You won't forget. It's easy to figure out. There's over 2 million users using Truebill right now, and it's helped them save over $100 million, which is a fair chunk of money. For those Bucks fans, that's just under half. Well, actually, a fair way under half a Supermax contract that Giannis has got there. So anyway, don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. truebill.com/lockedonnba. So Jordan Nwora, a guy that was a hot topic to start the season and has fallen out of favor a little bit. He went down to the G League there for a little bit as well. Understandably so, once the Bucks got a bunch of guys there. Honestly, even if he was playing well, then he might have still been squeezed out. It's difficult if everyone is healthy and in this rotation, particularly when you consider the addition of now Wes Matthews is probably going to get an opportunity to play. But it was just nice tonight to see him scoring the ball a little bit. And they needed him to. You know, you looked at this lineup at the start, and an interesting beginning to the night for Jordan Nwora, we should say. Rodney Hood, was there even any explanation for what went down with Rodney Hood? I got to be honest, I assumed that he was taken out of the lineup because there was a positive test or something like that, and he wasn't going to come back. So when he came back and was just sitting on the bench looking kind of casual, like nothing really happened, rubbing his knee a little bit, I was like, what is going on with Rodney Hood? Anyway, by the way, Hood came in and hit a couple of shots as well, but Jordan Nwora 15 points tonight. And for all the talk of the other things that we need him to do, ultimately, I think his future in the NBA lies as being a bucket getter, being a scorer. So to see him actually do that tonight, hit a couple of those tough shots that we know he can make, throw down a really nice dunk, as I mentioned earlier, learned his lesson from getting swatted by Miles Turner. It was nice to see him have a bounce back, and you could tell that his teammates were happy for him having a good night as well.
Yeah, it was still a little bit of a roller coaster. I mean, he hit a couple jump shots in the first quarter and then forced a really bad shot thereafter that he missed, and then he got pulled like right after that. I wasn't sure if that was like a
chill out.
Yeah, that was like a intentional thing from Bud to basically be like, dude, no. But you know, I mean, when he came in the fourth quarter, I mean, he was obviously, in particular then, he was obviously a big part of closing that game. And, you know, I think the important thing is that it wasn't like, you know, bucket getting, head down, don't look at anybody else. Jordan Nwora, you know, he got a couple buckets. I think they were both on cuts, right? Where he just got passes for layups basically. And then he had the finish in transition. So, and then, perhaps fittingly of, you know, running it still Jordan Nwora, they had an offensive rebound. I think it was like with 2 minutes left. So I mean, the game was well in hand at that point. But he got a kick out for a wide open three with, like, you know, the shot clock having just been reset. And he put it up right away, missed. And then the Pacers got the rebound. I don't know if you remember this, but like he then like inexplicably like kind of like jumped up to pressure the ball, and then the guy just like went right by him. And I think they got a basket finally on the other end. I mean, the Pacers scored, I think, 5 points in the first 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. I mean, they were just like completely terrible, couldn't make a shot. So I was kind of like, oh, Jordan, Come on, man. Come on. But he also had a really nice drive and kick out to Pat Connaughton for a 3, because of course Pat Connaughton
The one
in the fourth
assist, which is
quarter,
always noteworthy, by the way.
always noteworthy. So yeah, I mean, is it a breakthrough? I'm not going to say it's a breakthrough for him. I think the seasons are long, and I mean, we've talked about it. He's obviously been a bit in the doghouse. It's been notable how little he's played, even with some of the injuries. So that, I think, made the start tonight, even more interesting to me. But hey, last year as a starter, Jordan Nwora, 22.5 points and 8 rebounds a game in 2 games as a starter. Granted, that was with basically the Bucks, resting all their, good players, and they didn't win either of those games. So I guess maybe Bud trying to tap into some of that Jordan Nwora microwave starter capability. But yeah, I mean, encouraging for him. I think with young players, like, so much of it's just mindset and just, these guys having to figure out like how they battle through an NBA season. Oh, look, I've got Dudley here.
Dudley is a much bigger player than last time he made an appearance on the podcast. That's for sure.
Oh, now he is trying to bite me again. Yeah, Dudley had an incident last week where he tried to he successfully ingested a toy of some sort, and that landed him in the veterinary hospital getting surgery to have said toy removed. Now he's stuck in my cable wire. Okay.
Well, as long as he avoids the dreaded history of Dudley's having knee problems, we hope that he'll be fine.
Yeah, but anyway, so it's been a long week for Dudley, but yeah, he's back to jumping up and being a puppy, 5-month-old puppy. But yeah, figures that Dudley would show up. All talking about Jordan Nwora, still the kind of him and Mamu, now the token young guys on the roster. But yeah, encouraging for him, and I mean, it's just, you got to be ready when some of these opportunities are going to avail themselves, and maybe this can be a little bit of a turning point. I mean, still 15 points on 15 shots, so as much as it seemed like, oh, he's having a really good night, the net efficiency was not really there in the end. But again, I think some of these guys like him in particular, young guy, just needs a little bit of probably a shot in the arm. And Chris Middleton hopefully is back next game. That might obviously cut into his ability to see the floor. But again, season is long, and with the way things are right now with COVID and all this other stuff, again, just good to have guys pop up and show that they can contribute, even if it's they haven't been doing it all season. So we may need to close the book on Jordan Nwora sooner than we'd like, but I'll say this: let's see what he does the rest of the season. I don't have high hopes, but you never know. And I think it was good to see him at least flash some of that ability tonight, kind of being able to hit the jumpers, getting to the rim a bit, as you referenced, and a little bit of floater game too, right? I mean, he's got a skill set that if he can harness it and leverage it properly, and do it in a way like he did tonight, where he's having to kind of pick his spots a little bit more, then who knows? There may be an NBA player there after all.
All right, so just as we wrap it up, I just want to mention Javonte Smart as well. This guy's just scrapping out there. He just makes a nice play.
He went at Miles Turner. He like went right at Turner early and got a layup, and then I think he hit a 3, right? So yeah.
I mean, he's just a pretty solid player. I mean, you just don't expect that for these guys that you sign middle of the season as a two-way guy. So shout out to him. And George Hill also, good to have him back out on the floor. 9 points and 3 assists for him in he only played 21 minutes. Just quickly with the schedule, you mentioned Chris Middleton. He was warming up before the game. We saw that on social, but Eric and the guys that were there were tweeting that out. The Bucks have a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. They're in New Orleans. Then they have Cleveland, the rampaging Cleveland Cavaliers, who are playing some really, really good basketball. So, we'll see what happens with Chris here in the next few days. And in the meantime, make sure you check out the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. They've got you covered for everything you need there on Locked On Bets. And I had a few people ask Frank, as in regards to Giannis, I know you mentioned the time frame is just like it's impossible to say when he's going to be back. Of course, we hope that he's there on Christmas Day. It'll be a shame for a bunch of people that have bought these tickets and want to see Giannis on Christmas. I believe that he just has to have the 2 negative tests. Is that your understanding? I mean, we saw that weird LeBron situation where he was kicking up a stink, and what are we doing here? Well, you tested positive, LeBron. It's like you don't get to just like change the rules yourself. So we'll see. Hopefully Giannis is okay in 6 days, 7 days, then passes all the medicals and is good to go for Christmas. But it's going to be just a wait and see.
Yeah. So, because I was also trying to figure, is it a minimum of 10 days or what? But yeah, you can come back theoretically earlier if you get 2 negative tests in 24 hours. But again, I mean, I think typically what Chris was out 2 weeks roughly. Jrue was out longer, but that was kind of pre-vaccines, right? So it was a little bit different situation. So yeah, I mean, the only Bucks game I'm probably going to see this year is December 22nd, and so that suddenly became a lot less interesting of a game. So yeah, go make sure you clear this virus and test negative real quick, Giannis, so that the one game I see can actually be more entertaining. But no, I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to see kind of what happens. And unfortunately, there's a pretty congested schedule here, as you referenced. I mean, you'd love for this to be happening at a time when, you've got a couple of 2-day off windows and you're just not, he's not missing as many games. But that's just the kind of the way it works. And I was kind of shocked. It feels like there's just been so many guys going into the protocols of late, but I think I saw, I don't know if it was Jim Wazarski or who said it, but I thought somebody said like there's 22 guys in protocols right now across the NBA, which, I mean, it's less than 1 per team, but I think it feels like more just because the Bucks, the Bulls, the Nets have all had like multiple guys go in like right after another, and Bulls have had games canceled, and all that. So yeah, I mean, the Bucks have had pretty good luck overall with this stuff, and I mean, at the end of the day, better to have it happen now than, I don't know, say games 5 and 6 of the NBA Finals, when I think, I mean, let's be honest. I think, we heard about it later, and I think we were all a little concerned, right? Especially when you saw Thanasis go into the protocols during the finals and thinking like, anything about Giannis? I think there was probably a lot of anxiety in the Bucks organization right around that time, and thank the heavens that that nothing happened back then, and that the most important games of in franchise history, I would argue, went exactly the way they did. And it's the way it is right now. If you don't have that same luck in December, the season after, better now than some other more time when the games matter a bit more. So obviously, hopefully Giannis and Wes Matthews and Dante are feeling okay, and the vaccines are doing their jobs and they're asymptomatic and they can come back quickly. But obviously the rules are what they are, and we'll see. Hopefully the Bucks can just kind of scrounge out some wins and get some 3-point luck here over the next week or two.
Yeah, I think that's the main point. Hopefully they're healthy and their families as well. That's always obviously the roll-on effect of all this. So hopefully they're doing well. Hopefully we see them soon. But we'll see the rest of the Bucks pretty soon, as I mentioned, Friday night. So we'll have a podcast tomorrow. We'll look ahead to the Pelicans and also the Cavs. But for tonight, at least, the Bucks pick up a win that maybe some people may have thought was pretty unlikely. So that's fine. They continue to just dominate the Central Division. It's an absolute joke. 114-99.
Can we get a Pistons game? Can we get another Pistons game this week? Something just...
We need a blowout. We need a 30-point win.
They really need to win that Pelicans game, man. With the Pelicans hurting the way they are, man, just claw out that Pelicans game. And the Cavs have been very good, so if you split the back-to-back, I think okay, it's just the way it goes. But yeah, try to get that Pelicans win right. Especially last year when they lost that Pelicans game with Eric Bledsoe going nuts. They owe the Pelicans a win in New Orleans. I think Jrue Holiday needs a revenge game down there.
One of the rare teams in the NBA that owes the Pelicans one over the last couple of years. So, we'll see what the Bucks can do. But like I said, we're going to look forward to it on tomorrow's podcast. So for now, for myself, for Frank, we'll catch you guys then.